Hey, everyone out there in podcast land, thanks for joining us today on the next exciting episode of Lending Leadership with the Mortgage Pros. Robert Fillyaw here, joined by Tom Mills, David Holland. Hey, fellas, welcome in for the next episode. How are y'all?
Yeah, doing great. How you doing, Robert?
Good, man. Good. Happy New Year to y'all.
Doing good. What is? Somebody asked that question yesterday. What's the point where it's acceptable that you can continue to say Happy New Year to people, or when's it like it's too late? It's way past New Year's.
I think it's probably too late. Like, we're probably way past it, but you know,
January, first 2 weeks of January.
I think this is our first recorded episode of the new year, though. So
that's
first
it.
episode 2025. Here we come.
Here we come, coming to take all that is ours in 2025. That's why I threw it out there. Today, though, I'm really excited because we're going to be talking about effective communication with our clients and referral partners, you know, covering some best practices, talking about kind of what's typical that we see in communications, maybe some of the stumbling blocks that originators run into communicating, some of the tools that can help us out there. So I think there's a lot of meat in this topic. This is something over my career I've seen originators struggle with. What do you guys think about that?
I think it's a great topic. I think a lot of LOs get hung up on this, probably 2 or 3 podcasts. But, you know, number one, I think be honest. Always be honest. Honesty first. It's never the cover. It's never the crime. It's the cover up. Number one. Number two, set clear expectations. We talk about this on our sales meetings all the time. And we have seen this recently in our shop where someone took a 3-week non-QM transaction where it was destined to fail. So setting clear expectations, saying no is also okay. Everyone wants every transaction, but if you're in a very hard transaction, you do not set clear expectations, every waking minute of your day, working day and otherwise, you're going to be thinking about it and it's going to consume you. It's not
miserable.
Yeah, it's not worth it. And we all coach our LOs. We get it. But it's setting clear expectations, and that is so important.
I think, you know, the most interesting thing I think about communication is it's like, why wouldn't you want to communicate well? Because, you know, number one, when you look at, you know, what if a customer complains, if a realtor has a complaint about an originator, it's usually 9 times out of 10 about communication. So when you know that someone is most likely to complain about communication, if you communicate really well, you solve the most likely complaint that can potentially come your way. But in doing so, you create opportunity because you know that realtors complain about communication. You know that customers expect good communication, want good communication. So when you do it, you have that ability to separate yourself from the rest. You know, when you're an originator that communicates really well, and then an agent does business with a loan officer that doesn't communicate really well, they absolutely feel the difference between the two processes, whether they go smooth or not. You know, I think when someone has to call and ask you a question of what's going on, you kind of failed them. You know, as we talked about this being the top, you know, first episode 2025, I urge everybody that if you don't have, you know, a way that you communicate and everything that you do and a system for your communication, to really start to put one in place, and maybe we can help you do so in this call today.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think you touched on a couple of key things, guys. You know, to me, it's so important to set that level of a communication, set clear expectations, because as you do that and then you fulfill it, it just builds trust and reinforces yourself as the consummate professional, right? And really, at the end of the day, that's what our clients and our referral partners are looking for. They're looking to know that my transaction, the biggest purchase that I've ever made in my entire life that I'm super stressed out about and that I don't do every day, is in good hands. And the way that you give them that sense of reassuring and that feeling that, hey, I've got this, is by setting the right expectations through communication and then fulfilling it through communication. When you build that, that's where you get the really strong referral relationships. That's where you get the clients that love you forever and send you everybody that they know. So it's really, I love your point, Tom, that you're going to eliminate the complaints. It gives a really high level of customer service, but also, guys, it's a really important tool to build your business.
It's a sales tool. Yeah.
It's a sales tool. It's self-serving. But if you nail this piece, if you get this piece right, it'll put you in the top 10% of originators in the country. And I guarantee you, your business will grow. Communicate early, often, set the right expectations, be honest, as Dave's talking about, and then come through with it.
Yeah.
Tell
them exactly how you'll communicate.
And it's not hard. Depending on your pipeline, it can be done in 3 or 4 hours in the entire week, and it can be done well. In what I spoke about earlier, it's never the crime, it's the cover up. When something goes wrong, do not bury your head in the sand and hope it will magically disappear, or you're going to work it out. I mean, certain things happen in the mortgage transaction, right? Some are out of our control, like title work and appraisal, right? Others, we might have made a mistake. Others, things come up midstream that we didn't anticipate. But when you have something that goes sideways, communicate that immediately to the customer, both realtors, if there's realtors on the transaction, and be honest about it. I mean, maybe take a half a day or day to have a solve, or be honest, like, hey, I'm not sure how we're going to work this out. I'm working on it with my underwriter, my manager, whatever the case may be, but communicate it.
Whatever you communicate, an expectation that you set, like if you're not sure, hey, I'm not sure yet, I'm working on a solution, I'll be back in touch with you by the end of the day. Hey, guess what? You got to call them back by the end of the day and give them an update, right?
Answer or not.
The silence is deafening. Like,
is deadly.
When transactions go sideways, the biggest complaint is people don't have answers or don't know what's going on. I've had a lot of deals that have gone sideways in my career. I let people know. I set the proper expectations. If I don't know how I'm going to solve it, I'm honest about that. Those are not fun calls to make sometimes. Sometimes you get reamed out, right? But if you're honest about it, the realtors and the customer will generally respect you. If you make a mistake, own up to it and own up to it quickly. Never, ever blame your underwriter. Never, ever blame your processor, because as an LO, it's always your fault at the end of the day. That's how it's always been my philosophy. And it's funny, a lot of the transactions that have gone bad where it has been my fault in my career and I've owned up to it, I've actually, I work with some of those agents to this day because I was honest about it and we solved the problem.
I think it's important to know that, our clients and our referral partners, they don't expect perfection. No one out there is perfect, right? They expect open and honest communication and for you to fulfill whatever expectations you're setting. If you do that, you're going to be ahead. I've said for a long time, Dave, to your point, eat the frog. There's nothing worse than, something's sideways and you don't get ahead of it and you don't make that phone call. And it's just building, guys. You're not doing yourself any favor. Eat the frog, get that call out of the way. You'll feel 100 times better. And then, you'll find that usually when you do that, what I found in my career anyway, is when you do that, it goes way better than if you bury your hand in the sand and let it compound. Then the fallout is exponentially worse. And
every day it gets worse. Every day.
Yeah. And if you get ahead of it, now you've bought yourself more time because the closing date's always looming, right? The sooner you communicate it to the agent and the client, the more time they have to react and maybe help you come up with a solution, find a way forward. Burying your head just wastes time for everybody.
Yeah, and a lot of it is not setting expectations up front. If you get a painfully hard transaction, John Tice customer he's self-employed, has 5 businesses, owns 25 rental properties, has some other complexities on his file. You take it in and it's a 2.5 week close and you're setting yourself up to fail. And by the way, John isn't good at technology. So he's got to stop by your office and give you everything, right? That is a recipe for disaster. There is no way anyone's going to walk away from that transaction happy. So
talking about, why we communicate and making sure you get ahead of it and the reasons for it, some of the foundation, I think is all great. We've talked a lot about these kind of difficult conversations, right? And let's be honest, guys, they're no fun. They suck. I've gotten chewed up and spit out by agents, by clients when I've dropped the ball before. What are some best practices that you guys have for delivering bad news, doing it professionally? How do you approach these tough conversations? How do you try to keep your clients and referral sources calm and kind of walk them through it while still maintaining trust and rapport? Like, what do you guys do? What do y'all see that works?
I think, again, being honest in falling on the sword, in coming with the solution. And if it's a mistake that we made, just being honest about it. I mean, we're not perfect. Something that is slightly the coward's way out, but I'll put it out there for our listeners because I have found it somewhat effective.
I think I know what you're going to say.
Well, especially with people who have tempers, right? Sometimes when they get the news, they are able to calm down and process it than getting them. And I'm not suggesting email. I'm suggesting using slide dial.
I do the same thing. I was going to say, you took it.
Yeah. Slide dial, leaving a message, right? And then that way they can process it, right? And again, it is slightly the coward's way out, but sometimes it gives people 15, 20 minutes, an hour to think about it and calm down than getting the news cold on the phone and them feeling they have to react negatively. So
is that for them or for you, Dave? Let's be honest here.
It's a little bit
of both. A little bit of both.
And listen, for those who are listening out there who maybe don't know what slide dial is, you can look it up. It gives you the ability to call someone on their cell phone and it does not ring. It goes directly to their voicemail. You can leave a detailed voicemail that they get. And then maybe by the time they've called you back, they've had a little time to breathe and calm down. This is a great way not only to deliver news like this, but also if you're trying to deliver, maybe some updates and you have that borrower that is going to hold you on the phone for an hour telling you about their cat's activities over the last week. True story. I had a borrower that literally would keep me on the phone telling me about her
cat's activities, huh?
Yeah, what the cats did for the last week, right? So like this is something where you can use that to deliver the information and the news that you need and maybe not get tied up as much of a time suck. So great tool if you're not using it. It's something I've used for a long time. Tom, what do you do? What have you seen that's worked?
I think it's not about what you do in the moment of having to make the bad communication or the tough call. It's really about what you've done that led up to that moment that makes that call more difficult or not. Like you mentioned, communication builds trust. I know we always say trust is built from what?
Small promises kept.
Small promises kept is what we believe in.
Shout out Steve Kyle.
When you had, when you working with somebody, the average customer you're working with, today, sometimes that's 4, 5, whatever months, it's not the 30-day cycle like it once was. So you have a longer time to establish trust. You do it by letting them know what you're going to do. And then you do that and you have your standard streams of communication. And along the way, you happen to build relationship oftentimes with the customer. And then when you have to confront that tough one, it's not as hard because they trust you. They believe you're coming from a good place. They know you've been on top of things. It's hard to think somebody hasn't been on top of things and putting your best interests at their forefront when they're communicating like that, when they're doing exactly everything they told you they were going to do, and plus, and going above and beyond there. The conversations are tough, but then you just peel the Band-Aid and you make it happen because you've established a relationship, a rapport with that customer. They know you're coming from a good place and everything that you do with them. And I think it really just starts in the very beginning, from the very first call to when you're going to call them back, to what's going to happen, to how long this is going to take, whatever the case may be. It all starts there, and it's built with every touch and every conversation that happens. And then sometimes the tough ones have to come in the mix of that.
It's interesting, Tom. We were talking about kind of the basis of communication, and then we got off on this side street of difficult communication and how to handle some of those conversations. And you just circled kind of back around to the beginnings of the conversation and building the trust and the rapport. And I want to take just a few minutes and talk about what you guys have seen and, what's worked, what hasn't even is probably just as important in your careers, on techniques for clear communication, making sure that we have empathy and we're really, trying to put ourselves in the customer's shoes as we're doing this transaction. The reality for us in this profession is there's a lot of jargon. there's a lot of stuff that we do day in and day out that I think we take for granted that are outside of the scope of our clients, right? How many times, I mean, a simple example of how many times have you asked the client for a bank statement to be told, oh, I don't get bank statements, or a pay stub. I don't get pay stubs. Well, you like, just the explanation of that, that's all communication. And it's all part of being a really good loan officer, is walking them through that, not getting annoyed with it, explaining it. So what do you guys see that works really well kind of in that vein of communication, and what doesn't, maybe? Like what doesn't work?
Well, what doesn't, you kind of went into it, jargon, right? By using terms that people aren't going to know, not being patient. I think number one, you need to be a student of the mortgage game, and you need to understand mortgages as a loan officer. That's a given. That's a whole nother episode.
It's a whole nother episode.
Yeah, when people start questioning you, like when they send you only the odd pages, 1, 3, and 5 of the bank statement, right? You need to communicate effectively why you need all the pages, why you need page 5 that says this page is left intentionally blank. You need to explain that. You need to be firm. You need to have empathy and say, hey, I understand. Well, I guess if we, in this case, we probably give this person automatic VOD, but that's another story. You need to be firm. You need to explain it. I don't make these rules. These are rules coded by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, whatever the case may be, and you need to explain it. And the worst thing you can do is let your client run roughshed over you and then kick it to your processor or be afraid to ask. We see that with LOs here. They don't want to ask for the hard stuff, the additional items, and then they get into trouble 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks down the line. And then the customer's frustrated.
I love that line that you just said, right? Like, I don't make the rules. What I used to say to the point to my clients is, hey, listen, unfortunately, I don't make these rules. I know sometimes they don't make a lot of sense. The good news is this is nothing personal. It's the same for everyone. I'm not asking you to do something that we wouldn't ask anyone else to do. It's an even playing field. Everyone has to play by the same rules. We're going to need this to proceed. And then I would take it a little bit step further sometimes. If I had someone that's really pushing back and really being difficult, right? Pick an example, that bank statement. You don't need that. You know what? That's great. I don't need that. Don't worry about it. Don't send it to me. Oh, really? Yeah. I'm going to let your agent know you're going to be paying cash today. Well, I don't have enough cash. I guess you might want to send me that bank statement then, huh? It's a little extreme, but you guys are the professionals out there, right? I think Dave's point is pretty valid. If you let them run roughshed over you, that's part of clear and effective communication and setting expectations. You're potentially setting yourself up for just more trouble and challenges down the road.
Well, and Tom brought up a good point that not, a little bit of firmness comes from the very first conversation, right? When I get like a know-it-all customer from the beginning, I try to set kind of clear expectations, like, hey, it's going to be the same everywhere else. Here's why. Explain it. This is ridiculous. I've never been asked for this before. You've asked me for the same thing 4 times. Every loan officer on this call has heard these things. Why do I need this? My Uncle Billy said we don't need this when he bought a house 27 years ago one time, right? So you got to kind of like set expectations, lay the groundwork, and not let them bully you. And that's not every customer, right? Right. But it's certainly some.
Well, and every customer is different, right? I think you have to ask questions. You have to understand who your customer is, what are their concerns, how do you seek to solve, not to sell. When and communication kind of goes both ways too. I mean, the customer, you have to set that expectation, like, hey, you got to be honest with me about everything. I'm your guy. I'm in your corner. Is there anything that concerns you about you obtaining this financing, anything about your income or your assets or your employment that you would think I should know? I think that's a really important question, because sometimes people have these things in the back of mind. There's this fear, like, why not tell me what that fear is? I can find it out today and solve it today. I may not see that, and it comes up, 5 days before closing, and now
we're gonna find out anyways. It's
a two-way street. So I think it starts with like that communication is like, hey, here's how we're going to work best together. And you do the same, and you be forthcoming with them, and they be forthcoming with you. Trust build along the way, and you get there in the end. That's really what it comes down to.
I like that. One thing as we're talking about a lot of this, I'm thinking about kind of setting the stage out of the gate, right? That's what we're talking about, and having just some proactive communication. One thing that I've always tried to do, and this is more as we were getting ready to submit files to underwriting, but it goes back to how you communicate with your client. Is if I'm got an underwriter going through my file and there's a question that comes up as they're going through it, I want the next thing to look at to be the answer to that question, so they don't start digging, right? That's always worked really well for me. I've done a lot of government loans, and some of them were like a sweater. There was a thread that started getting pulled on. It was all going to come unraveled. So I had to make sure there were no loose threads, right? I think it's the same thing when you're trying to talk to your clients, to Tom's point, getting ahead of it, setting the stage, right? Like anyone out there, I think, that is not doing a consultation with your buyers out of the gate and explaining to them, spending 30, 45 minutes with them, walking them through the process, explaining the terms, explaining what to expect, explaining everything, you're setting yourself up for just more questions and more issues down the road. That 30, 45 minutes you spend in the beginning is a game changer for the rest of your loan process. And it's a proactive level of service that you're providing. So if you're not doing that, I would strongly challenge you to make that part of your repertoire in 2025. Make that part of your process as you take care of your clients. What best practices do you guys have around that?
Well, I just want to jump in on that. That's a great point. And, sometimes these podcasts, it gets my ideas to help me and my team. Like something I want to do in 2025. And we just saw this with a loan yesterday with one of our LOs. We've all got a little complacent with technology, right? Here's the online app. Fill it out. We'll call you back. We're not gonna check anything, trust but verify, right? So something that I'm going to bring into my best practices is when we get the online app, because sometimes we take them over the phone, 1 out of 1,000 we maybe take in person, but we're getting too complacent looking on the online app and not digging and taking things at face value. So number one, when you review the 1003, right, it builds rapport. When you spend 30, 45 minutes, it builds a little stickiness too, right? And then you find stuff out. This example, if a full conversation would have been had with the customer, we would have avoided so much heartache and pain.
What was it, Dave? We got a few minutes. What was it specifically?
There was a gap in 8 months in employment. The LO took it at face value, assumed the dates were correct, didn't question it. So that's something we see. Something we see is on the declarations that they're not they're a first-time home buyer. Everyone on this call probably realizes if you're under a certain income limit and you're a first-time home buyer, you have no LLPA adjustments, which could be massive on the rate. No one likes finding out a week before closing that your interest rate's a half point higher. Not good.
I love the fact that you want to incorporate this in your daily process, Dave. I think it's so powerful. And guys, like, when Dave talks about stickiness of it, that's a really powerful thing. I think one of the biggest challenges we face in our market is the commoditization. Did I say that right?
You did. You got it.
We have to make sure we don't become a commodity, right? And where the push button get mortgage, like we have to trend away from that. We have to set ourselves apart from that and really be the advisor and the true professional. So when you get that 1003 in, taking just 5 minutes and saying, "Hey, I got your app in. I just want to verify a few things with you," is basic as what's your social? Like, I see your social is blah, 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 blah. Can you confirm? I see your date of birth. How many credit reports do we have to repull in an annual basis because the client fat fingered their social? It's double digits.
Or missing junior or third, or they leave their middle initial off, or they have Dave instead of David. There's a million different things. And then getting the information up front as well too, and looking at the W-2s and pay stubs. But I'm digressing to another topic.
Yes. So many topics interwoven in this topic that we could go off on. Guys, we're coming right at the 25-minute mark. We want to kind of keep it there. I want to close it with one last question. I know what mine is. I'm interested to hear what yours is. We've been in this business a long time. We've managed a lot of people, high level. What is your one pet peeve bad habit that you see originators doing in regards to communication, that if you could just pick them up and shake them and, or maybe magic wand that you wave and they never did that bad habit again, it would be fixed? what would it be?
I want to go first because I know when I want to take mine. Setting clear expectations.
Okay.
In saying no if it's not possible or it's going to be a fire drill and everyone's going to lose their mind. Setting expectations.
David, and that's a true story. I actually have a background made for when Dave's talking about him setting expectations. It comes up and says if every LO was Dave Holland, right? Because the problem with setting expectations for a lot of you out there is, you know, you're not closing as much business as Dave is. It's easy for Dave, for an LO who's doing, you know, 60, 70, 80 million to be a little bit more firmer on those expectations. If you're doing 6 or 7 million, you want every deal that you can get. And we totally understand that. Just think about every yes comes with a reaction. Every no comes with a reaction, right? There's some follow-on that comes because to everything you say yes or no to. Just take that into consideration. But I like that, Dave. That's a great one. And you practice that one a lot. So good job. What's yours, Tom?
You actually touched on it earlier. It's blaming others, whether somebody else made the mistake or not. Like, you are the person that they elected to do business with, and that is your team behind you, and you're, to that customer, you're the face of that team. And it's okay to say things like, we made a mistake or we done this, but you don't single a person out in the process. You don't point a finger at your company. You don't point a finger at the underwriter. You don't blame your assistant. You take the ownership. They feel that too. People appreciate when people just take ownership for something.
Absolutely.
Even when they think it wasn't maybe that person's fault, they actually appreciate it even more. You're missing an opportunity, and you're really just a bad teammate when you do that. A bad teammate.
Yeah. And it's going to bite you in the butt long term, right? Because then when you do need something and you're asking your ops team to go above and beyond for you, they're not going to be as willing to do it. I love that you brought that up. That's actually my number 2, Tom. So yeah,
That's a good one. Then your number 1 must be really annoying.
It annoys the mess out of me, right? Listen, if you're out there and you're in this business and you're in sales, answer your damn phone. Answer the phone. That phone.
What's the stat, Robert? What's the stat?
I'm going to mess it up. It's either 82% or 87%, but 82 or 87% of clients close their loan with the first person they speak to. Answer your damn phone.
They're trying to give you money.
They're trying to give you money. Answer it. Answer the phone.
I was doing a panel at a conference and someone asked me what my favorite piece of technology was. And I pulled my phone out of my pocket and said, my
100%.
phone is my favorite piece of technology.
100%.
100%.
If you took all the other stuff off of it, it'd probably be even better and less distraction if it was just
right.
Well, also taped to my office door is a picture of a phone, and around it says, "Use me, I make you money."
Yeah, no doubt. Guys, great subject, great topic, really good insights. I appreciate the time and everything that we've shared today. Guys, if you found value in this out there in podcast land, go ahead and smash that like and subscribe button. Leave us a 5-star review. And thanks for joining us here on Lending Leadership with the Mortgage Pros. For Dave Holland, Tom Mills, this is Robert Fillyaw. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.